Hello, everybody. How are you?
Hey, what's happening?
How's it going? I thank you all so much for tuning in. My name is Don. I am with Trotec Laser for the last 2 years. I'm the consumables manager here in Canada, and I am joined by my very esteemed colleagues. To my right, this is so confusing, you guys. When I'm on camera, I never know. See,
No,
again,
it's the other way.
Dang it. Never. I'm joined by the very talented Kelly Deveraux. Kelly, how are you?
Great, thank you.
Good.
Looking forward to today.
Absolutely. This is kind of a weird one because we only get to do these consumables webinars probably once a month. You guys get to see me online doing silliness all the time, but I want you guys to know part of the reason I can even do this online silliness is because I have people like Kelly taking care of all the important consumables business while I'm over here doing foolishness. Also with us today, a face that I'm sure a bunch of people who've been with us in the past will recognize. James, how are you?
Oh, yeah, I'm fantastic. Best day ever.
I'm so glad to hear it. I always love your brick background. It always, like, I say this every time, but I really, really enjoy it. I feel like it really classes up the the joint.
That's right. Well, I'm going to get candelabra next time to put in the back. Maybe a grand piano, perhaps.
I look forward to it. Last but certainly not least, we're joined by a very special guest once again, coming from North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Bianca, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Awesome. What's the weather like on North Carolina on a Friday?
It's nice and hot and steamy. We've reached, mid 90s with the heat index at 109 yesterday. So you walk outside and you're soaking wet. So
it's just nice to hear that it's beautiful weather for someone somewhere. Because lately in Ontario, it's been hit or miss.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous here in Vancouver.
Is it? I was just reading about Vancouver this morning. I don't know. It just sort of happened across my my desk this morning about some of the architecture and stuff in the city. And all I could think is like, I really absolutely have to get out to BC at some point in my life.
We will put you up.
Oh, can I see the brick wall in person?
Yeah.
Is there any chance?
Yes, absolutely.
Our very generous producer Lev in the back has dropped it in the chat, but he's absolutely right. Anyone who's watching, we would love if you would say hello. Let us know where you're watching from. We're going to get into it pretty quickly here because we've only got an hour today, but we're so happy that Amy and Ratna, who've been with us on previous streams, could join us again today. We're so excited you guys are here. As I say, I'm going to jump right into it. I have made this silliness because today we're going to be talking about our TroLase products, and not just the basic TroLase products, which is, I mean, if I was going to make it the simplest that I could possibly make it, I think they are. I mean, how would you describe it to a customer who's meeting TroLase for the first time, Kelly? It's like an engravable lamequoid. It's like a multi-layered plastic engravable material.
Multi-layered plastic that you engrave off the top layer to show the color underneath.
Very cool.
And you can pretty much use it for any type of signage you're doing. Hospital signs, office signs. Yeah,
that is kind of the big one. It is like signage is kind of the go-to for. I should say part of the reason that it's so exciting to have Bianca here, if you weren't with us for the first one of these streams, is that Bianca actually works with ILC in Northern Carolina, which is, I mean, they produce all of our TroLase products for us. I mean, we would be out to sea, I think, without they're like the hallmark product for us. Bianca, do you ever get to hear from customers about really interesting applications or stuff that they've done with the product from time to time?
Occasionally, usually it's when there's some challenges or when they're trying to overcome a challenge. So like I said, I don't deal directly with most of the customers as the manufacturer, but I work closely with all the subsidiaries and with Trotec Laser Canada. Like I said, a lot of times when you guys have a challenge with a product or a customer presents a new application for you. So that's kind of where we come into play with our expertise and how the products can be used outside of maybe the normal realm of how you would see them typically used.
That's really cool. I have to ask the same question to James because I know as like a laser guy, one of the laser guys, you are kind of constantly solving problems for customers. I know in terms of certainly on the laser side, but I imagine, have you ever seen a really cool application done with TroLase? Not to put you on the spot, but I know you've seen a lot of cool stuff done with lasers.
Well, I mean, because of the color possibilities of TroLase, how many crazy different colors there are, I've seen people use it to kind of make a color photograph out of different colors. Wow. So they're placing the pieces in, vector cutting out the parts, engraving, the photo on each piece, putting them together, sort of lining them up in sort of a, not 3D, but sort of lined one in front of the other to make sort of a picture box, 3D picture box. I saw one of a like a grain elevator out in the prairies, cool. Where the sky was made of 3 or 4 different colors of blue, and there was yellows and reds, and it's fantastic. So I mean, not just science, but there's it was actual art. And I think, Don, didn't you make a TroLase picture once?
I've done so many things now for YouTube videos that they start to blur together. We've done some really cool. The TroLase in particular was one that when I came to Trotec, they had already done some really great projects with it. But I have to say that, so here, let me get started here, because I was going to say one of the things that I really like about TroLase is it not only comes in the colors, but part of what we're going to get to talk about today is some of the special TroLase. So the TroLase Metallics, for example, like you'll see in the video here, that has a metallic finish on top of the material. And it's one thing that I was really, really impressed with when I first got here and was just starting to do projects. This was one of the first, actually. So Josephine, one of our previous designers, did this project for us, but is one of the things that I could never believe is how close they can replicate that perfect, almost metallic looking finish on the surface. And the fact that it comes in a bunch of different colors and stuff. I have a sort of a soft spot for this one in particular, because I love that little, like the sort of video game sort of 8-bit look that she did with these. But this material in particular, I think, is really, really cool. Kelly, does the metallics raise any sort of processing sort of difficulties that the normal TroLase wouldn't give? Is there any sort of special trick to working with it that you've heard of, or is it kind of similar to just the basic TroLase?
I would say it cuts and engraves about the same as the other TroLase. What's fun about it is that you're taking something that looks just like metal and you're able to engrave it and cut it all in the same sequence. So it's a big time saver. And it looks really nice too.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious from Bianca, how do you get that metallic look? Is it a difference in the like, are they constructed in the same basic way? It is a different, well, actually you tell it, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, yeah. So if you want to compare that to the regular, like the TroLase solid color pigments, which are produced in like a gravure printing process, there is actually real metallic or metals in the TroLase Metallics, which provides that highly reflective surface. So even though it's a very thin coating, which allows for it to be easily engraved, it can replicate that real metal look.
I never realized that there was real sort of like metallic. There's actually like metallic. Is it a flake or is it like a, gosh, that's really, really cool.
The metallics are produced in different ways, and I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. Most of our metallics in the regular TroLase metallic line are for interior only, because they can oxidize like a metal or a mirror. However, we have a whole line of exterior grade metallics. So the metals used, and some of that process, we're buying the very thin film as a metallic, is a proprietary process with our film vendor. So we don't have all the details. We give our film vendors the specifications that we need for these products. And we laminate a very thin film, a mil or less than a mil thick, that has the metallic coating on that film when we lay it down in the lamination process.
That's really, really cool. I hope anyone who's ever, so we had a lovely comment from Lasertech in Botswana who mentions that the TroLase Metallics are a great alternative to actual metal because of the finish specifically. That they've had customers who couldn't believe the plaques that they made from weren't actually metal. I hope anybody who's watching who hasn't gotten a chance to see them in person gets a chance to come to one of our showrooms or to attend one of the demonstrations that we do, because they are really, really impressive in person. In terms of how they're most used, I mean, a lot of the stuff that you're seeing there, as Bianca mentions, they are sort of interior only by and large. But again, this is another one of those things that I've seen used for a lot of really, really cool applications. I did want to ask really quickly, when it comes to, so the difference between the Metallics SR and the Metallics Plus, we'll get to in just a second. But when you mentioned about them oxidizing, I wanted to quickly clarify. So I get questions a lot about the best way to clean plastics. That there are certain materials or certain particular cleaners that we shouldn't use potentially when it comes to, you know, if you put together like a trophy plaque or something and you want to polish it, you want it to keep that beautiful shine that it has. What would be the best way to go about kind of making sure that it stays lustrous and looking nice?
You could use, a soft cloth, or we even say like a mild soap and water. You don't want to use any cleaner that is very abrasive. We use like a 99% isopropyl alcohol, sometimes just not directly on it, but on a rag to wipe down the surface. And Kelly and James, I don't know if you've had any recommendations for your clients outside of that. As a manufacturer, those are some of the primary ways that we would recommend to clean the surface.
I always recommend like a Novus cleaner. I mean, I always recommend it because, I mean, it works with everything, the acrylics, the TroLase, any kinds of plastic, even the surface of your laser itself, like the window of your laser itself. Stay away from Windex, folks. Keep some Novus plastic cleaner.
Always.
The Mr. Clean Magic Eraser works really nice too.
Where's Mike Clark when you need him?
I was going to say, you would not believe how often the Mr. Clean Magic Eraser gets mentioned on this show. to the point where Miguel and I, during our Wednesday streams, have started to just refer to it as like non-brand specific, enchanted erasing product. We had a great question from Mohammed, who was asking about applying these plastics to engineering plastics, and then also about like a flat surface or a contour. Would you be able to give sort of any insight potentially, Kelly, about mounting these sort of materials? Would you use like a 3M adhesive like we offer on the back, or what would be the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. So if all of our substrates, we can put 3M adhesive on them. If you're doing a flat surface, you can pretty much use any of the thicknesses. If you're going to be doing a contoured surface, you want to go to our thinner lamicoids, such as like the 0.020, the 0.008, or the 0.004. They all do a contoured surface nicely.
For sure. I mean, with trophies too, especially, I suppose you have to keep in mind that they might be, mounted in any various shapes or badges. Pardon me. In that case, see, this is a fantastic. So this particular trophy plaque that Levis brought the video up here, this was done by, I believe, gosh, I'm trying to think who did this one for us. Regardless, yes, it was one of our students. Okay. You would never believe in seeing that in person that it is not real metal. It looks so incredible, but the price difference that you can achieve if you choose to use a TroLase lamicoid in place of a real metal sheet is pretty significant. I didn't, at the time when I was young, I didn't really think about it, but now looking back on all the participant trophies that I won, I think probably a lot of them were, I hope nobody wasted real metal on like, thanks for coming out to the violin contest.
You play violin?
Since I was 7 years old.
Oh, dude, we have to talk. I have when I have demos come out, to people want to come out to see the demo of a laser. They'll come out and we'll do the demo and we'll after the demo, we're talking on the phone, and they're saying, "Well, how thick of a metal can this actually cut?" And I'm like, "Well, no, sorry, these machines don't cut metal." They're like, "Well, yeah, it did. You were cutting it in the shop.
Watched it happen."
Like I watched it. How thick can you actually go? And I'm like, "Oh, you didn't realize that I handed you a piece of plastic."
That's so, exactly it.
Yeah, like even though they're touching it and holding it in their hands, some people don't actually realize that it's not metal. So it's you can easily, I'm not going to say fool, because that's not what we're trying to do, but it's an alternative, I guess we'd say. It's a great alternative to actually going out and trying to find somebody to shape cut pieces of metal when you need it. Yeah.
I would say, yeah. I mean, it definitely, I know exactly what you're getting at. It's more just about like giving it the implied value of like a piece of gold metal or a piece of, bright burnished silver when, but giving you the ease of use of the, of the laser, something that's laser cuttable and kind of easy to mold and fix into. But yeah, to your point, James, that's why I was so intrigued when Bianca was talking about there being a real sort of metal, like substrate or a real metallic
that
something in the coating. Thank you. Exactly. I talk for a living. You'd never know it, because it really does come across, right? We were talking though specifically about signage, which is why I want to hurry along to the Metallics Plus, because the Metallics Plus, if I understand correctly, and Kelly, you can correct me on this, but they are a very, very similar product, except these have been specially treated to be sort of UV resistant or UV friendly.
Yeah, they're good for outdoors.
That's
really really cool. But they engrave and they cut exactly the same way as the regular TroLase metallic and the scratch resistant one.
Yes. Oh, the scratch resistant one. So I passed that kind of quickly. I'm going to let this video play in the background because I think it is a cool application. I remember pulling this up originally thinking paper clips, but it's like such a cool thing. What I love about this is, again, just thinking about the number of applications that you could use this for in terms of signage. The TroLase out of doors is something that's been coming up a lot recently in the office, and just trying to get as much use out of the signage material outdoors as possible. That's why I asked you about keeping them clean. If you're thinking about having signage outdoors, definitely the Plus is a great option for something like that. That's going to be able to sit outside and have kind of a long lifespan and keep looking beautiful. Forgive me if I'm going quickly. I want to move along, so we got some great questions and I want to get to them as soon as possible. Like this one from Daniel, who asked about distributors of our materials in the US. We absolutely do. Trotec in the US has a great consumables manager, Alan, who's fantastic to work with. If you head to engraving-materials.com, that's their materials website where you can get a hold of them directly. Or if you just head to troteclaser.com, it'll put you in touch with your local Trotec and they can help you out. But they have a great, not only staff there, but also a great selection of materials. And also, like, Bianca's close by. So any questions, we've got your back. So this is a question from Mohammed. Let me see here, actually. You know what? I might pull up a quick question from some of our viewers from before. This was one that we got that I wanted to quickly touch on, because it is something we had a customer specifically come to us this week asking about the best way to cut Mylar. And I wanted to ask James if he had any experience with it, because it was a brand new one for us and it was very, very tricky.
Yeah, Mylar cuts great. Back in my old life, I cut like a 40-foot long sign that was or a stencil that was being used to spray a lumber tarp or something like this for a truck. And I cut it out of Mylar, and Mylar cuts just fine. If it's really thin, the surface is going to claw itself back. If you use like the 0.005 Mylar, it's definitely going to it's not as heat resistant as other plastics. So, but it does cut. You just got to know that some of the surface is going to melt back a bit. But the thicker Mylars, yeah, cuts fine.
This is something I wanted to ask you about too, because it specifically deals with dealing with TroLase. Mike Clark, who some of you might be familiar with from some of our previous streams. Yeah, Mr. Clean looking fella.
Oh
yeah. He always gives me heck when I make a sign from TroLase that is a lot of engraving. He says like too much black. And what he means is if you engrave a whole bunch into the TroLase, you do start to get that melting, right? And so I was curious if you could give me some tips about potentially engraving signage from like a TroLase material or a TroLase metallic, and trying to avoid some of that warping or that bending, or even like losing a little bit of the bubbling kind of thing that happens.
So is that directed towards me, or?
Yeah, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, for me, it all starts before you even turn your laser on. You think, do I have to engrave away the entire surface of this material, or more than 40% of this material? Kind of look at it and say, am I doing the right thing? Am I using the right material? And you could look on your shelf and say, well, I only have that one piece of material, in which case you have to put your customer off a day or so and go and get yourself the right material. So if you have to carve away most of it, you're using the wrong piece of material. Almost always. I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, but look at it and say, can I cut out the part and adhesive it to the background? Can I use a reverse engraved material instead to get the same look? Can I, ask yourself these questions, because and I'm sure Bianca's the expert in sort of the chemistry technology part of the material. But for me, if I'm putting too much engraving into it, I'm putting too much heat. Heat plus plastic equals melting or warping. Right. So do you have anything to add to that, Bianca?
It's just, typically with the TroLase, we're using an impact modified substrate. So that rubber in there will cause that melting and the extra stickiness that you'll feel. But that's also what prevents the material from being too brittle. So if your customer wants to shear cut a sheet into smaller pieces, that impact modifier and that rubber is what allows it to shatter and break on the edges. So
rubber, tell us more. That's the first time I've actually heard that, and I've been doing this for like 21 years.
So that's what that smell is.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, it's a PMMA acrylic, but yeah, they call it an impact modifier.
Really?
So
cool.
It allows more impact to the sheet and less brittleness.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if this is something that Lev will be able to pull up, but it was so impressive to me when we were doing PPE equipment earlier this year, and we were using exactly an impact acrylic from ILC, and we were finishing up this face shield video, and then Lev goes, "Okay, get the hammer." I'm going like, "For what?" And we set it down
for
and
action.
Exactly, and he slammed the hammer into the acrylic, and absolutely nothing. Right, and I was so impressed because it. I mean, you would read about, okay, I think it's going to be coming up here. So don't worry, he takes it off his face before hitting it with the hammer.
Okay,
yeah, thank goodness. But it's just, it never occurred to me that, the importance of that as well, though, right? That the way that allows you to work with it in a really like meaningful way, either with a shear or with a laser, being able to apply it to those curved surfaces and not have it breaking or bending, that sort of thing. It's funny that you mentioned the reverse acrylic too, James. We're gonna hopefully be able to. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay.
Watch
now
out.
I want you all to think about how it would feel if you're. Yeah. So there he goes. The nail first. Nothing, basically.
And where's the hammer?
You wouldn't believe that we get paid to do this, but it's like we have the greatest job in the world.
Agreed.
Oh, first knife.
Wow. So it is, that's a great thing is even the TroLase itself is knife cuttable as well. Mm-hmm. Lots of people don't realize this, but just a score or two with a knife on this stuff and pop, you can snap it against the edge of your counter.
Well, and keep that in mind for anyone who is wondering about the no hammer in this video. That's a different video, but the bending is still impressive. I think keep that in mind too. Anyone who's ever processed it and wondered about the stickiness on the side, what James is talking about there, the lightly scoring and just popping pieces out is a great way to avoid that if you have sort of that built into your production. Mm-hmm. It's funny that you should mention the reverse engravable too material, James, because it was one I wanted to put some specific emphasis on in this stream. It's one of my absolute favorite materials, but it's one of the toughest to explain, I find. with that in mind, I would ask the very talented Kelly, how do you best describe reverse engravable and like the possibilities that come with reverse engravable TroLase to somebody?
So usually I'll recommend it to somebody who wants to get some color into their engraving.
Right.
And the way it works is that you engrave on the back of the material. So you have a clear acrylic with a colored background, and you mirror your image. So you actually reverse the image. You engrave it backwards on the back so that it mirrors in the front. And you start with your first color, your main color, and you engrave off. You spray paint or paint that color. Then you engrave off the second color, you spray that color on, and then you just keep going until you've got all your colors on there. And then you have no etching in the front of the material, so you have a nice smooth front finish. If you turn it around, you go, oh wow, this is really old school, but from the front it looks super impressive.
Agreed. Oh, Don, I think you're talking, but we don't hear you.
Oh, you're right.
That means I'm really watching.
I'm so excited. I just wanted to point out too, can we all just acknowledge how nice it is that like James, you got so dressed up for this. We're going to hold you to this standard every Friday from here on out. It's going to be suit and tie, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm not. I forgot my tie, so
that's all
actually I'm wearing a tie. It's just black.
But yeah, so sorry, I was just saying, I love with this material how you can keep building and building and building. You can create something that's really, really impactful, and then also on top of that, it comes in quite a number of colors, Bianca, if I'm not mistaken, right? So you have that colored substrate on top that you wouldn't engrave through, if I'm not mistaken. Right.
So basically, almost any of the colors that are offered in the TroLase are offered or can be offered in the TroLase Reverse.
Wow. I didn't realize that. So I've got 22 colors here on my sheet, but it's possible that you could potentially even do other colors from the TroLase line as well?
Yes.
Wow, that's really cool.
With the metallics, not all of them are available to be laminated second surface. So like I said, not all of the metallics, but we do have a few metallics that we can laminate second surface as well.
And here's a little tip. You know, having the metallic especially, and I haven't used it on the colors, but the metallic reverse engrave material, if you use if you have a flex, and sorry CO2 users, this is a fiber one. If you use a fiber laser and you want to add some extra cool details to your reverse engraved silver brush, I did it on brushed silver, so that's what this is going to be about. You can shoot through the surface, the clear surface, with a fiber laser, because fiber laser sees clear things just like a window. It sees right through it. So the laser passes through the acrylic and it hits the silver on the back, and it will make a really cool texture on the silver. So if you can engrave the back with the CO2, but if you want to create textures or really almost like watermark kind of writing in the silver, then you can use a fiber laser and just get your settings just right so that it's just affecting the silver surface. It looks spectacular. Really, really nice. So try it out, fiber users.
Wow, see, I'd never known that. Okay, thank you, Lev, for go find the mirror acrylic. So I'd never known that. That's really, really cool. We might have to test that out.
Yeah, play with it.
Very cool.
So while Lev is pulling up that video, I wanted to ask a couple more little quickly customer questions, if you don't mind. One that I wanted to ask here, let me see. And this is a typical one, but we get it so often, I really want to come back to it. James, if you don't mind, your secret for finding the perfect settings for materials.
For finding the perfect settings. Now, I'm not going to tell you what the settings are because I have no idea what this person's laser is, whether it's a Trotec or what power it is or what lens they're using. But my secret for doing it, and it's not a secret because I tell everyone, is I will get a piece of, I'll just take a scrap piece and I'll put it down and I'll make a long rectangle, just fairly thin. We don't want to waste a lot of material. A long rectangle, and I will hit go, and I will start with, maybe the setting that comes with the machine. Or if you're not using a Trotec, just pick some random setting that seems right. And now, at least with the Trotec, you're able to switch the material settings on the fly. So you can change your focus on the fly. You can change your speed on the fly. You can change your power on the fly. So go with those. I mean, I normally start with what, like when I'm installing a new machine, I'll usually start with what is suggested by the factory, and I will start changing those materials settings as I go till I find one that's nice. If I'm using a black core, I'll just nice and black, and this way we can spend 2-3 minutes just changing the settings. Once you find one that works, you can fine tune the next setting. So let's say we're going to adjust power first, then we'll do another little rectangle and we'll adjust speed next. Then we'll do another little rectangle and adjust focus next. And you just keep doing that until you have it just right. There's so many ways of doing it. This is another way here is where you're actually coloring in the job control with Trotec. You have 16 different colors that you can use. You can change all those materials and have just a 16 color pattern of squares. Probably what's showing on the screen here is they've changed the speed and power or frequency or focus right on the job control as well. So that's another way of doing it, is creating a grid like that.
Lev was showing it there, but if you visit our YouTube channel too, we've got some great videos on exactly what James is describing. So, you have 16 sort of preset settings in job control, and you can set each one of the colors to, very gradually increment one of the things that he's talking about, be it speed, be it focus, be it power, whatever it is. And then you can bring all of those grids to your customer as well, if you like, and sort of say, here are all the options that it looks like we can do on this particular material. What would you prefer? Where would you like to go to? I wanted to ask really quickly, I know that we touched on it, but I'm just going to repeat it one more time because we got the question specifically. So Kelly described it really well, and I want to touch off on all the sort of check boxes one more time, because I know I've probably missed some, and if you guys would stop me on the way. If you're going to be doing TroLase Reverse, you're going to want to, this is, same thing with our mirror acrylic. So, oh dear, always watching the old videos always makes me feel weird. So you're going to want to flip your engraving, whatever it is, because you're engraving on the reverse. So taking, whatever your image is and flipping it horizontally, you engrave it on the back of the material, as you see there. This is a very professional video done by this bright young man. And then by applying color to the reverse of the material, then exactly as Kelly's saying, that will show through. Anything you engrave becomes transparent, basically. So you can then build up colors through either spray paint, as Kelly was saying, or even putting another potentially thin material on the back in order that color shows through, and you can just build and build and build.
The wood is really nice on the back.
Absolutely.
It's
really
nice.
Have you seen that done?
Yeah,
I haven't.
We did the mirror on the mirror acrylic with a piece of wood on the back.
Ooh, that's really, really nice.
Yeah, because the mirror acrylic is reverse engraved as well.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask a question, actually,
please,
to Bianca about the reverse material? Because sure. We may get some questions after this webinar, since you mentioned that any of the colors that you have can be done. Is there a minimum quantity to produce a new color? Or not a new color, but a color that we have for the TroLase?
Yeah, currently we'll run them in 10 sheet quantities. So that's 10 full sheets. Okay,
perfect.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That is something, never hesitate. If there's something special that you're looking for, like a custom color or something like that, I mean, definitely bring that to Kelly or James or whomever you're dealing with at your local Trotec. We'd love to try and help you to Kelly, we'd love to try and help you out there.
Are you pointing at me?
Yeah, you would be. Yeah, he's figured this whole reverse thing out that I haven't gotten to yet. But you would be amazed at what ILC can achieve with custom colors.
I have a question based directly on that. Are we still doing wood grain lamicoid stuff, Bianca?
I believe Trotec is stocking a limited number of wood grains. I think there are 2 in the line right now.
Yeah.
And that was based on demand.
So could the wood grain be applied to say a reverse engrave as well? Like, do all these colors also, are you also able to change like these different colors into a reverse as well?
We need a specific type of film for the wood grains. So the 2 wood grains that we're currently supplying, we would not be able to run those second surface.
Okay, cool.
Or the TroLase Reverse.
Right.
This is one more quick question, and I don't mean to pick on James, but just because it is sort of laser related, a question from Imad in the chat, and forgive me if I'm butchering your name, but that when they're cutting some material, sometimes they'll see fire and they'll immediately push pause. Is there a solution? Are there certain materials where you would expect to see a little bit of flame?
Yeah.
What would you cancel them if you had the chance?
Yeah, I mean, when the laser hits the surface of the material, I mean, you're seeing a lot of plasma fire up because the energy has to go somewhere. Like you're releasing the material from its bonds, and it's not always like fire. Now, you'll see a big flame shoot up quite often with, say, like rubber or wood, things like this. If your air assist that's blowing through the nose cone of your Trotec isn't blowing away the flame, then the plasma that's being released is just too intense to be blown out. And so I liken it to when you light a candle and you put your hand through the candle. When you put your hand fast, you don't feel anything. Most times that flame, that flicking flame that shoots out is not a big deal. This is why we say, stick around the laser while it's processing. But if you go slow with your hand over the candle, you're going to burn all your skin. And this is the same with the laser. If you're going really, really slow with material, it means you have too low a wattage for the material that you're trying to process, in which case you are, you're lighting a flame. You're lighting some of the gas, and that's when you see the big long flames that produce, that sort of acrid smoke that sticks to everything. Like if you're cutting ABS, for instance, it's really, really like it produces a lot of flame, and the flame also has this sticky smoke that sticks on everything. It mostly has to do with the material, or you're using too low a wattage for the material that you're processing. So make sure that you're not trying to produce everything with a 30 or 40 watt laser. You're trying to go through 1/2 inch acrylic and wondering why it's always flaming up. It must be the material, right? No, it's most likely because you're going way too slow. That hand over the candle, always remember that.
I love that I'm in a room with 4 professional people, and yet somehow we've all passed our hands through open flames on candles and all know.
Every time you see a candle, don't you do that?
This is a great question from the chat, and I believe this is specifically for the reverse material. So the TroLase Reverse in this case, can this material withstand being outside in the winter? What might be the lower or even upper, temperature limits for something like that? Bianca, is that something, perhaps not necessarily knowing the number offhand, but, if somebody asked about putting reverse outdoors, is that something you would or wouldn't recommend?
Yes, they can be used outdoors. There are service temperatures for the TroLase and the TroLase Reverse with the acrylic. So I believe, this is just off the top of my head, but I think down to somewhere around 32 degrees Fahrenheit. However, it could sustain temperatures below that, but the colder you go, it will affect the performance properties of the acrylic. So whereas it will become more brittle at very cold temperatures and will perform more like an extruded acrylic than an impact modified acrylic, meaning it will become more brittle when it dips below that typical service temperature.
Gotcha. So also, we're not recording this, or it's totally fine.
Are you saying that the processing is different at 0, or like when it's on the wall?
When it's like on the wall, if it was outside, because I'm assuming that you aren't going to be fabricating in a below zero room. So,
When was the last time you visited Canada, Bianca?
The new Trotec Arctic Arctic
Yeah.
Plus
it's been a
laser.
year or two, so.
One I wanted to a question I had quickly for Kelly and Bianca as well. Maybe I'll start with Kelly. Recycling materials is something that is of growing interest to us, certainly. It's something that I don't have a lot of familiarity with at Trotec, and I want to learn more about. But when people ask about the possibility of recycling, our plastic materials or any of our materials, is that something that's currently possible, or is that something we're working towards? Is there an option for something like that?
That's a great question because I get it a lot, and sometimes I don't know exactly how to answer it. But because it's plastic, potentially, yes, it's recyclable. We don't have any process in place now, but definitely something that we should maybe work towards doing.
I agree.
Especially with
Bianca,
all the scrap little pieces that are left over, right? If they're reusable.
well, that's just it. And James mentioned earlier about trying to reuse your scrap for, for tests, for laser power and stuff like that. And that is something we do always, always, always.
Yeah.
But as Kelly says, I mean, it's something that's really important to me because, as you say, it is plastic. But because it's such a particular plastic, I wanted to ask Bianca, in your experience, let's just say the TroLase line in general, is there a sort of recycling option, or are there parts about the TroLase that make that more difficult?
The acrylic, the PMMA is a bit harder. It's not made with a recycled material because that would affect the performance properties of the material that everyone loves about it and makes it cleanly laserable. We use a lot of ABS at our plant as well. That we can send back to extruders, even with the film in some cases, that they can regrind into other materials or materials that don't require a lamination grade surface quality. That said, acrylic is a tough one. We've not found a lot of places that will take our acrylic scrap. Especially once you put a film on it, because then you have to disclose that as well. However, finding another laserable substrate that could be used as an alternative is something that's been on our, an R&D project for us. We just haven't come up with a great solution yet.
I mean, I can appreciate that. It's something that we've been trying to work through here as well, in terms of just how best to advise customers, because we get that, like Kelly says, we get that question a lot, and it's important to us as well. But we also want to be doing it responsibly, obviously. That was always sort of what I had heard, is that there's sort of a difference between the sort of the cap and then the core of the material, and that sort of makes it difficult to work around that process. But rest assured, you heard it here first. It is something we are definitely trying to work on. It's something that's really important to us.
Yeah, I always say, until there's a recycle program in effect somewhere, get innovative with your scraps. I mean, I used to have a shop, and especially in the early days when there was hardly any customers, you had to keep all of your scraps. We had a big sign above the bin that said "mask it" or "garbage basket," and so we bought from Trotec the big rolls of paper mask. So always have a roll of this paper mask on hand, because you rip off the original mask, process something, and you're left with a piece, that big, that you could use for, say 20 name tags and make, $300 on. Put some paper mask on it. Call Kelly, order some paper mask. Put the paper mask on the surface, then put it back on the shelf. So many times people just put it on the shelf very carefully, and then 2 days later they very carefully put something else on top of it, and then or there's dust all over it, or maybe there's paint spray from when you're spraying that gets on it, and the piece is just garbage. So mask it or garbage basket.
I really like that. That's so smart.
My saying, always remask your material at the end, and that's a great way to recycle your material, by getting to reuse it later on.
That's so smart. And keep in mind, you never know. You may have a customer come to you, as you say, 2 months down the line, who just wants a couple of name tags or something from that same material.
Hey, one name tag gets you a $15 or $20 setup, plus $12.50 or something like this. This 1x3 piece of material is a potential $37 or something. Like it's happened before, lots and lots. Just because they forgot to order one name tag doesn't mean that you have to give them a deal. People will pay it because they need that name tag. So,
I assume too, oftentimes when somebody's coming to you having forgotten one name tag, they're not expecting a deal. It's,
No.
I've made a mistake. What will be the cost to, never forget that what you do has value as an engraver.
If you go to the national brand box store office supply place and buy a name tag, they're not doing the name tag, they're sending out, but they will charge you like $22.50 for every single name tag. Every tag, even if you want 100 name tags, that's the same price for every name tag. So just know that you can charge a bundle for that one tag. But we're getting off topic here.
Well, you would think so. I really quickly wanted to touch on this question from Mohammed, but then I do have a little ROI section that I want to maybe share with those watching. It's very basic, but just to give you an idea of some of the things that James is also talking about when it comes to the reverse material. So Mohammed was asking about using the color application for a Glock polymer frame. So I can't speak specifically to that particular frame, but the reverse material, I assume once you've the TroLase in particular. So we have two versions of reverse material, but the TroLase in particular is the lamicoid, so it's quite thin. If you were to finish an application on that where you've engraved it, you've painted it perhaps, whatever it might be, could you then apply 3M to the back of that, Kelly, and still install it in the same way you would any TroLase, I assume?
You can apply the 3M to it. It's not, we don't typically get that request too often, but yeah, you can. It's possible.
You can purchase the 3M separate from its
sheets.
Yeah, you can buy the sheets. I think
12 by 24 sheets only.
I assume a Glock polymer frame where we're talking about a handgun. Yeah. So the only thing I could think of, I will mention too. Okay, yeah. So as Lev, thank you, Lev.
Thanks, Lev. Where Mel when we need
desktop wallpaper. What I was going to mention though is you would be really surprised how strong that 3M adhesive is. You may often see sort of videos where we're shooting in our showroom and we have giant We the North letters up on the wall, or even this big Trotec behind me. That's just held on with 3M. So, I was thinking about, applying it to a handgun and how you might think that with the shaking or the moving or whatever, that it might, not stick. It is kind of perhaps a weird surface. Yeah.
The shock might be too much because 3M eventually it's an epoxy. It's an epoxy. So it does harden-ish
over time.
Yeah. Not super hard, but I would think some kind of a silicone adhesive. I don't really know. I couldn't say. As I said, where's Mel when we need him? He's the handgun expert.
There's a stronger 3M too, though. There is the one we use is a 467, and there is a 468 that holds up to. Well, I know it holds up to lower temperatures and higher temperatures. So
we stock a 468 at ILC. Okay. We don't usually use it for TroLase products, but
we keep a roll of it in Ontario because we do have a couple of customers in northern Quebec that are using it.
Yeah, it's much thicker. It's like a 5 mil versus a typical 2 mil adhesive. It's usually a bit overkill for most applications.
Yes. Well, and as Lev mentions in the chat too, you could also use sort of a mask like James is talking about, or a masking tape, and then potentially spray paint the piece. But it it really depends on what you're looking for. It might be a fun experiment to do, certainly. I am curious. I have another question here that I want to throw at you guys. It has to do specifically, here it is. So it is a little just scooch off topic, but it was a priority question that somebody registered with in advance, and I wanted to ask James if he had any experience with engraving on gemstones at all. This is a great example of masked engraving that Lev is showing there on the video. But yeah, gemstone engraving, James, I was curious because it was a very specific question that we got.
I mean, gemstones themselves, like I don't ever engrave on diamonds and, you know, precious gems. I wouldn't bother, because unless I had a real big need to, I wouldn't want to accidentally do something bad. But like things like agate and the like, it's like engraving stone. You know, I mean, this looks like a deeper engraving here, but I generally go a nice light white engraving. So I'm using sort of a lowish power and a highish speed, and just use lots of DPI. So try lower power, higher speed. It creates a nice white mark on the surface of things like agate. I think that's agate, isn't it? Yeah. So that's what I do.
The increased DPI just creates sort of like a more intense. It's just
white.
Trying to
okay. a smoother white.
So it's trying to put down
less
more
gaps, less gaps. Yeah, less gaps between the passes.
Okay. We had another question too about the thickness options of the various Trotec materials. So I want to ask Bianca again, not to put you on the spot, but when it comes to the TroLase line in particular, what would be the typical thicknesses that someone might be, you know, choosing between when it comes to those products?
So for TroLase, the thinnest is the TroLase Lights, which is a 0.004 or a 0.1 millimeter. And then we go up, we have a TroLase Foil product, which is a 0.008 or a 0.2 millimeter. And that one actually has an impact modified acrylic core. And then we go up to the 0.020 or the 0.5 millimeter, and that would be the TroLase Thins, and from there you go up to the typical 1.6 millimeter or 0.060, and then typically to the 3.2.
Very cool. Millimeter. I would say those really thin that Bianca was mentioning are great for decals in particular. We've done some really beautiful stickers and decals and that sort of thing with the really thin material that are fantastic. If you buy a TroLase laser, If you buy a Trotec laser, they will come in the starter kit that you receive, and I really suggest you try them out because they are fantastic. So I have that little ROI that I promised you. This one is particularly in regards to the TroLase Reverse. As I say, it is one of my very favorite materials, and it is also, I think, something that perhaps gets a little bit overlooked, but it is something that I think is really cool because it allows that sort of building up of a product, as we were discussing. So if you have a customer who has, if you're doing signage for a customer in TroLase and they have a really complicated logo with a lot of different colors, this is a very simple way to accomplish that, as long as you can sort of match those colors using, you know, spray paint or whatever the particular sort of material you're using on the back. As you see here, it's a spray paint, but you can really build something cool very quickly. So just so you can see, as we were sort of describing earlier, now that the paint is dry, that blue is already finished. So now we can go back in and reverse engrave again, just in a different section. And now that's going to show up transparent again. So we can add another color. So as Kelly was saying, you sort of do your main color first and then building on top of that. The sort of options, particularly for signage with something like this, I think are really cool. Try and shrink that down again. But it's not gonna let me.
Wow, the solo singing performance.
Yeah, well, not a one-trick pony. Is typically, just
violin singing.
Yeah, I can't say I can do well at the same time. Like I could, Did that say stats for nerds? That's amazing. Okay, hold on. I'm just gonna put it out there. But as I say, it's a great material, particularly for signage, and one that. I think a lot of times we have to sort of, I like being able to take the time, if I get a chance to speak with the customer, to sort of go over what is possible with that particular material, just because, like a lot of times I'm talking with lasers about, or I'm talking with customers about lasers, the customer might come in with a particular application in mind, but one of the best parts of my job is getting to open their minds to all the different things that they can do, with the laser in particular, and obviously with our materials too. So here we go. We'll just pop this back up. So keep in mind, the numbers that I've shared here are just very much rough, but they're mostly in terms of calculation to help you sort of look at what you might be able to accomplish with the material, and then also to get an idea of how you might think about pricing a job. So I would hope, if James wouldn't mind cutting in here and there, if he had some insight,
Sure.
I would really appreciate it, of course. These samples, we did them with a Speedy 360. So on the left, every time you see the left column here, we've done just a singular sign if the customer just needed one. And on the right side, we've done a full sort of quarter sheet, so 12 by 24 piece of the reverse where you can fit 2 signs at the same time. Using the 360 for the single sheet, or the single sign, pardon me, on the left takes about 21 minutes roughly, whereas to do both signs on the right, it's 24 minutes. So it's just only about 3 minutes roughly more to add the extra sign.
3 minutes more, okay.
Yeah. Now, James, would you be able to explain to me really quickly and potentially to our viewers why it's the optimization of the laser head that allows, if you're doing sort of a larger...
It's the deceleration and acceleration. So if you're driving a car down the highway, you're able to get up to speed really quickly and then maintain that 100 kilometers per hour as you go. Whereas if you're driving the same distance through a giant neighborhood, you're stopping at every stop sign and then having to accelerate and decelerate, accelerate, decelerate.
Right.
That's why a small piece, you're accelerating and decelerating a lot. You're putting on the gas and immediately putting on the brake to turn it around. Whereas with a large sign project or multiple sign projects, you put on the gas, leave it on at full blast, and then put the brake on, decelerate, do it again. So you can run at full highway speeds when doing multiple jobs, whereas you're going, through the small streets with a single job.
Oh, thank you, Lev. So 12 minutes and 3 seconds per sign for the 2 signs. See, this is why, as I say, very generous and good at math. It is something really to keep in mind when you're doing production, though, of course, because it allows you. So in this case, with an ROI, typically we would consider, if you have a customer ordering a large batch order, we would potentially reduce the price because they're ordering a big batch. In this case, it's only 2 signs, so you might not want to incorporate that in. But it's something to keep in mind when you're looking at your pricing, because if somebody wants to put in a bigger order, it might not realistically be a bigger time investment for you, or a much higher time investment for you, but obviously the return there is quite a bit more. So again, for the single sign on the left, as James mentioned, you're charging a setup fee no matter sort of when you're doing an engraving for somebody. Here we've said $25. The retail price for that sign, the single sign, because again, you've had to paint it as well, do the production work, is about $62. So the total revenue for that single sign is $87.89. In terms of costing, so again, numbers are rough, but just to get you an idea, 1 quarter sheet of that particular material, the TroLase Reverse, is $20.37 divided by 2, obviously, because you're only using half of it, so $10.19. If you were paying somebody $15 an hour to do the setup, maybe it takes about 2 minutes, so 50 cents. And then $100 an hour for engrave and spray time, that sort of thing, at 21 minutes, that's $35.36. So total cost about $46, and a gross profit to you of $41. Now, the more exciting thing, for the 2 signs, same setup fee, of course. The retail price for 2 units is going to be considerably more, $125.78. As James mentioned, just because you're doing more does not necessarily need to, or just because it's a particular order does not necessarily need, you get to decide what makes sense in terms of your pricing. That gives you a total revenue of $150.78 for the 2 units. But because the laser's optimized doing, kind of side to side or doing more projects, the time that it takes, as you'll see, is not considerably greater. So the same cost, obviously, for the quarter sheet, $20.37, the same 2-minute setup time, 50 cents. And then the engrave and spray time at $38.30 is going to be $64.17. So you're making, almost double profit, almost just shy, with only an extra 10 minutes of laser and sort of spray time. Definitely something to keep in mind with this particular sample is, we have had to incorporate the time that it takes, obviously, to spray the paint and then allow the paint to dry. But just, again, something to kind of hopefully get your mind thinking about, what you might use these materials for, and then how to look at, pricing. Yes, 30% more profit for the 2 signs. Again, good at math. Thank you, Lev.
Our producer, Lev. Thanks, buddy.
So good. We have just passed an hour. And I have to say, it has been a hectic time recently at Trotec. And so I really wanted to thank the three of you for taking the time out to be with me this morning, to be able to share your expertise and to answer these great questions. I really appreciate you all for watching again. We're going to be doing streams every Friday. Typically it's the late jam, but I think we might be looking at, mixing it up with special streams like this. So going forward, there might be kind of little surprises and stuff to look forward to. We'll do our best always to have, a great panel of experts with us, as we've done today. And me. Just wanted to say thank you guys again once more. If you're interested in any of our Trotec materials and you're in Canada, you can visit engraving-materials.ca. Regardless of where you are in the world, you can visit trotec-materials.com, and that will be able to direct you to your local vendor. And then, realistically, I hope you keep coming back every single week to watch the streams, and, we appreciate your time. Thanks, you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Yeah.